Caution, Breathe, Iris, Light, Mind, Flash, J-Doll, PG Play, Anytime, Stork, Nada, Much, Slayer's Boxer, C, Bisu, Savior, 16 of the most powerful StarCraft gamers in the world, LG, Intel Katrina, Gong TV, Star Invitational.
The game has started. Terran at the far right position is C. And here we see Stork. Once again, a Protoss versus Terran in locations that are very far apart, making the Terran push very difficult to execute. And with carriers almost inevitable on this map, Terran will have to execute everything perfectly if he wants to win. There's a possibility of Command Center first or Nexus first. Both are somewhat of a gamble. More of a gamble for the Terran than the Protoss. Protoss have really proven that they can actually go fast Nexus quite often. Note the neutral building on this map makes for some interesting rushes. Especially if you can break that neutral building down. C knows that it all comes down to this moment. Whether or not he can beat the number 2 ranked player in the world on a map that favors the number 2 ranked player in the world's race. Note the position of the building setting up for a wall-in. Here we see the scouting probe. Quick, hide, scouting probe. Moving down here. Going to go early Nexus. Nexus first on this map. Now Terran going for a typical fast gas. The gateway's now up. Gas soon to follow for the Protoss. The SCV is on the move. Terran generally scout later than Protoss, although Protoss fast Nexus, they almost always scout as late as the Terran. They need all the probes on the minerals, or at least as many probes as they could possibly get. Looking onto the forum, somebody says this will be a great game. C versus Stork. Can't wait for this. GG's and thanks, Gom TV. Somebody else says they like my casting. Thank you. I appreciate that. Shout out to all the StarCraft players from Peninsular School in Australia. Excuse me, I didn't see that part on there. I hope I didn't mispronounce your school name. Aloha from Malaysia. Thanks, Gom TV. And someone says, I hope C will not get owned by carriers, but instead repeat what Berserker did to Bisu in the previous match. We always appreciate you guys telling us what you're thinking on those forums. Gateway up. Now it looks like the factory add-on is finished. The early command center's out. This seems to be the most typical build for Terran to use. Stork trusting that his macro is good enough that he can do this. Now note that there's Dragoon Range is producing, or upgrading, I guess I should say. I'm interested in seeing if we're going to see a Robo Bay or a Citadel before the Stargate, which is almost inevitable. Remember that Bisu went for a 1 gate The Nexus was not as early as Stork's, but it was a fast one gateway. It looks like C has sent out his first Vulture Bike. He's going to see if he can't get a scout inside of that base, taking a peek at exactly what Stork is doing so he knows when he needs to push. Although there is already a scouting SCV, inside of that base. Now, until the scouting SCV is eliminated, Stork will most likely not reveal his tech unless he's very confident that he can defeat his opponent anyways. Which means that Stork's tech will essentially be delayed. Stork being aggressive with the Dragoons and not picking off that scouting SCV. But he has to be very careful because Spider Mines are on the map, and that's why. Dragoon dropped to half health. Now, as we can see, it looks like, well, it just seems as though C is going for the early Vulture Bikes, comfortable without even getting a tank, because most likely Protoss will not get the Robobay that fast. Here's the Robobay now, but it will definitely not be in time to break the Terran's defenses. Going back to what people are saying on the forums, someone says Katrina is the best map for Protoss. This is bad for C. I agree. I think it's going to be very hard for him. Someone says Stork is just a Protoss god. It will be difficult for C to turn around things, and I agree. I agree with both of those statements, especially if C can play really clean in the first 10 minutes. Once the carrier tech gets out and the carriers begin to multiply, it's going to be difficult, very difficult. Again, the same build we've been seeing all these Terrans do. Early Armory followed by the Scanner, starting the +1 attack upgrade, and also scanning to see when exactly they need to attack. Here's the Stargate now. Now is the time that Stork has deemed the proper moment to defeat C on a map such as this. Or at least start the tech pattern that could defeat C. C going for an early expansion, though. Earlier than we've generally seen on this map. More than likely because he knows his opponent already is going carriers. Presuming that perhaps if he can get that command center out pretty fast, well, there just won't be that much that the Protoss can do. The Goliath size will be just too much. Getting a forge and also getting a robotic support bay. Very interesting. Normally we would see that before the Stargate. Perhaps wants to use that Reaver to fly around the map and pick off any additional additional SCVs making expansions. Once the carriers get up, many times Terran expand in different locations all at once because the carrier fleet can only be in so many places at once. The Reaver could assist in that, but at the same time, the Reaver does cost a reasonable amount of Vespian gas, making it difficult to get carriers as quickly, or at least get carriers and a ground army as quickly. Or at least a ground army comprised of Dragoons. Using that observer, he now knows that the armory is the choice for C, and a wise decision, if I can have any say in the matter. He will continue to scout with that observer to figure out how many factories his opponent has. Getting the forge, too, just in case he does anything that's like a fast starport opening. He can then at least be safe and not have to pull his carriers back too much. Stork really seems to know what he's doing with this build. This build is clearly very calculated, and he's clearly very confident it can win because this is a critical moment in the tournament. Again, if C loses, it's all downhill. He'll be out. If Stork wins, well, we all go home. Not a lot of SCVs with that expansion. I don't know why he didn't transfer more there. A little sloppy by him. Looks like he's got the Reaver out now. He may begin the Reaver harassment. One problem with this, though, is this does force Terran to make turrets a little bit earlier than they would have expected, which means that the Terran many times, well, the Terran just has a hard time, the Protoss has a hard time actually utilizing the carriers later on if there's so many turrets there. It's kind of, so it's going to work in two different directions. He also might have made the Reaver there just so that because Terran's more likely to scan that expansion, he'll immediately assume Reaver and think the carrier tech hasn't started yet. Not sure. testing his opponent's defenses. He sees that turrets are pretty much making it impossible for the Reaver to do any harassment. Stork is pulled out now and has decided to expand. Upgrading air weapons at the Cybernetics Core. If he can get the +2, they'll just be very powerful against the Terran ground army. The Reaver with this army will also make it very powerful against groups of Goliaths. Note that he's even got a lot of spider mines there in case there's a recall or a Reaver drop, although I doubt the Reaver would even make it in there that far. Vulture Bikes have the speed upgrade, giving C a little bit more map control, although Stork has picked off a lot of C's mines. 2 carriers out now. I would say when he gets about 4, then he'll be in decent shape, although 6 would be ideal right now. Looks like Terran's decided to push. I just tried to drink my water really fast after I opened it, and I realized I whacked the microphone into my face. Getting confused by which one actually had the water bottle. Even I am so excited to see what's going to happen in this game. Okay, here comes the Reaver now, moving into the main of the Terran. And is he going to drop here? But Terran's already pulled out. C's reaction time is just too good. He needs to pick up that Reaver. Oh no, he's going to lose the Reaver, making the Terran push extremely deadly. This could be a possible GG. Uh-oh, probes now being taken down. Dragoon's trying to come up from behind, but this is going to be tough for the Protoss without that Reaver. Carriers will soon come in here, but there's a lot of Goliaths. Third Stargate, too. 3 carriers out now, but it looks like the Nexus will be taken out by the siege tanks unless Stork can do something in time, and no, it does not matter. Nexus has disappeared. Bad place right now for the Protoss. Although the carrier numbers are growing, Stork has positioned a few Dragoons to cut off reconnaissance. Wow, he has a lot of Goliaths, and that's going to make the carriers that much weaker, especially with Stork throwing Dragoons away in what I would say is a rather sloppy fashion. Here are the carriers now, taking off these Goliaths. And it looks like he will pick out all those Goliaths, making these tanks incredibly vulnerable. That is something that we would not want to have C lose. He needs the tanks in order to support the Goliaths, otherwise the Protoss can just get a small ground army and in combination with the carriers take everything out. Here he comes again, sieging up, but carriers are now picking up the tanks, and this is the map, Katrina, where carriers are so strong. C not seeming to be paying attention, but instead macroing Goliaths back in his main. He's not attacking carriers, which are actually quite vulnerable right now. If he would only just move forward and right-click on them. Here he comes now, realizing his blunder, but he's lost so many tanks now, it may not matter. Another tank will go down for the Terran. Here come more Goliaths, though. He may be able to pick off this one carrier. And no! Barely pulling it back in time. The carrier numbers are beginning to grow, and C has to do something fast. This position he's approaching is just not good. It favors the carriers. He needs to be more withdrawn. Using those carriers, he's now picked off another group of Goliaths, retreating the tanks back, macroing Goliaths like a madman. Terran may have that extra expansion to their advantage, but it's the map that's really going to decide and how well Stork can control these carriers now that they're out. Tank down, another tank down, all 3 will die. And it just looks like there's not much Terran can do to close in, and Protoss is slowly pushing him back across the map with the Dragoons there to help assist the carriers. C may end up losing this 0-2 now. C attempting to be too aggressive after he took out the expansion, is throwing away too many units. Here come the carriers now. C has to hold this expansion or the tables will turn now in favor of Stork, picking off that turret. Now he can go for SCVs or the command center. Once he takes out a few more of those Goliaths and tanks. Now he may go in for a kill on that tank. No, again, instead the Goliaths. Nothing that C can do about this right now. The carriers are just too strong. And again, this map will probably not be in competitive play forever because it is just so powerful if you can get up enough carriers. Not using that dropship, which probably could have helped him out at least somewhat. Stork is a monster that is rampaging across the base that C owns. Here we're getting a shot in the Stork cam. Continuing to make those carriers 5 in the group. And air weapons about to complete. Picking off the tanks on the ground and the dropship, as we can see. There's really nothing Terran can do right now. He got ahead temporarily and then got too aggressive and just like threw all his units away. This really shows you how good Berserker was to take out Bisu, the #1 ranked Protoss on this map. So clearly it's not impossible, it's just very difficult for the Terran to do anything that's going to give them an advantage. C, once again, should have just given up the expansion. He did manage to take out one carrier, but more carriers are on the way. And yes, this is going to be very, very hard for C. He's trying to expand at the bottom right, but can't actually transfer his SCVs there, or they'll be in line of carrier attack. C not managing to mass up and take the map like we saw Nada attempt to do against Much on this. Here he flies in, picking off a few tanks. And Goliath, look at this. Now closing in and trying to put the killing blows in on his opponent. Stork is just a monster. Too many carriers, too many Dragoons. Good game! C does not look very happy that he lost to Stork. Stork is probably relieved that he won that game so easily. 2 quick and concise wins for Stork, ending the rest of the matches for the day. We have 2 Terrans and 2 Protoss now in the final. No more turns. We have Anytime and Stork as the Protosses and Berserker and Flash as the Terrans. We will continue those games on Wednesday, starting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Korean time. So please tune in. It's just been a very exciting event. I can't wait to show you guys the numbers for how many hits we've been getting. I can't do that just yet. But again, this is Nick Plott in Seoul, Korea, having a blast broadcasting these games to you. And I think we're going to have an interview coming up here, but I don't think we have the simul here to translate. Again, here we're getting a shot of the 4 winners, Flash, Berserker, Anytime, Stork. Flash will be playing Anytime, and Berserker will be playing Stork. So 2 Protoss versus Terrans tomorrow. Not tomorrow, Wednesday, just kidding. And I believe we're going to be closing this up pretty soon here. We have these 4 giants all trying to battle it out to win one of the most important StarCraft tournaments and one of the most important esports tournaments in history. Really, really exciting moment here. I want to personally thank you all for tuning in. I hope you found the games enjoyable and as fun as I did. We had a lot of fast-paced, quick wins and a lot of drawn-out macro games. We got the whole cake today. And I think I'm going to be closing this soon. No, I'm not. I'm still talking. And yeah, I'm really interested to see how well Berserker is going to do in his Terran versus Protoss today, because he seems to really be dominating at that matchup, really proving that he's stronger even than imbalanced maps are. And again, Flash just making this game look easy. It's going to be tough for our 2 Protoss players, but again, they are also both quite brilliant in their own rights. So it's, I really have no predictions for exactly who's going to win this. Thanks, everybody, and come watch again on Wednesday.